My Sassy Girl is a 2001 Korean box office sensation about a college student, Kyung-woo, who falls in love with a controlling, extremely volatile, and physically abusive girl. Many viewers appreciated the depiction of the girl as an empowered, dominating character, with the word "yopi" being used in Korean to connote something cool and fresh, and a departure from non-traditional, non-heteronormative dynamics.
뭐라고? 야, 어떻게 수업 시간에? 야! 그녀한테 매맞아 죽기는 싫습니다. 여자대학교에서 쪽팔리기도 싫습니다.
However, once it is revealed that her manic behavior and rigid control over Kyung-woo is a result of her grief over losing her fiancé, she reverts back to being a docile and vulnerable girl.
왠지 가슴이 아픕니다.
나 사실 너한테서 그 사람의 모습을 찾으려고 했었어. 그럼 안 되는 건데. 미안해.
With the reveal of her grief, her originally domineering behavior now reads as an unhealthy grieving mechanism that actually prevents her from forming the genuine connection and intimacy with Kyung-woo that she desires. In other words, the yopi is not empowering her, but imprisoning her. The lack of agency in her character design thus perpetuates violence on her mental health. This violence is exploited to serve the development of the male protagonist, Kyung-woo, whom the film prioritizes as the dominant perspective for viewer identification. In fact, the girl is a part of a long tradition of manic pixie dream girls whose purpose is to come into the male protagonist's life to teach him to live to the fullest through her eccentricities. Unlike other manic pixie dream girls, My Sassy Girl does afford the girl backstory and character development, but it continues to place limit on her female power by utilizing her otherwise subversive yopi to benefit the male protagonist. In fact, the film is based on the myth of Jeonwoo and Ginya, which features an otherworldly maiden who descends to Earth solely to serve the male protagonist. In general, female characters and their bodies are often portrayed in cinema to benefit the masculine social order, and often to quell male anxieties. Korea's 21st century transformation from an insular authoritarian regime to a cosmopolitan capitalist democracy has resulted in many existential crises around the nation's ideas of masculinity. In response, early Korean films have attempted to re-masculinize the male figure through excessive displays of violence, often perpetuated on female bodies. My Sassy Girl continues the tradition of using women to reassert Korean masculinity, but repurposes it for modern-day contexts, which in the late 1990s and early 2000s centered around the IMF crisis. According to Kuki Cho, the 1997 Korean financial crisis undermined trust in the state and sowed economic disillusionment among young people. These anxieties had severe consequences for women. In the late 1990s, Korea saw a rise in domestic violence and the appearance of its first serial murderer, whose victims were all women. In the workplace, women were harassed and laid off for the sake of preserving their male counterparts' jobs. From this era's economic decay and gender resentment, two archetypes as seen in the film emerge, that of the complacent boy
장래 희망이요? 아직 생각해본 적은 없습니다. 알겠다고요? 맞았습니다. 저는 먹구 대학생입니다.
and the sassy, overpowering girl. By the end of the film, these subversive characters will be restored to their heteronormative selves. These gender dynamics are not just confined to Korea, however. Instead, they reflect the changing gender dynamics in romantic relationships across Asia. In their paper exploring how Chinese men and women felt about the archetype of the pretty yet bossy girl presented in the film, Wang and Ho cited that both male and female participants never classified female physical aggression as violent. Instead, they viewed it as a form of childish stubbornness, or renishing. Participants of both genders saw this type of female behavior as a result of men spoiling their girlfriends because they do not want to lose the girl. In fact, the research suggests that young men who have not yet established themselves economically perceive themselves to be at a disadvantage in the dating world since they lack other forms of social capital. One male participant in the study, after finding himself in an abusive relationship with his ex-girlfriend, said, "I'm so sick of girls. I feel that young girls have their advantages, which is that they are pretty. For boys, no career, no advantage. When girls have advantages, they're so bitchy." The film resolves these anxieties around a disempowered male population, both economically and socially, by presenting the taming of the Yopi girl through a new masculinity. Kyung-woo represents the modern man, someone who possesses traits like compassion and patience that are prized in the contemporary dating world, and who also has the drive to self-improve and climb the social ladder. College boy Kyung-woo can also be read as an iteration of the Kokominan, or flower boy, who possesses soft traits typically associated with femininity. The Kokominam's youth is very important because it allows them to exist in a liminal space between childhood and manhood, before being subjected to the stresses of the Korean corporate world. The film seizes on this impressionable age to target and show young viewers experiencing economic disenchantment a path towards rejuvenation. Indeed, after the girl dumps him, Kyung-woo applies himself for the first time by getting better at squash, kendo, and writing, to the point of being able to publish a piece of writing.
그녀의 이야기를 영화로 만들자고 제의를 해왔습니다.
Read this way, the Kokominam figure was chosen to take audiences on a journey of character growth that could motivate young male viewers to be ambitious with life amid financial pessimism. Once he grows up, even dressing more like an established man in the final scene, the film presents Kyung-woo with the perfect demure girl. No longer sassy.
전 이렇게 그녀를 다시 만났습니다. 너무 우연이라고요? 우연...